Hello and welcome and Happy New Year. If I haven't said it to you already, my name is Shannon Kipp and I'm the Chief Digital Officer for DATAVERSITY. We would like to thank you for joining today's DATAVERSITY webinar, Data Strategy in Action, Using AI to Build a Foundation for Enterprise Data Governance Success. It is the latest installment in a monthly series called Data Ed Online with Dr. Peter Aiken. And just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, you will be collecting them via the Q&A section. And if you'd like to chat with us or with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, the Zoom chat defaults to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely change that to network with everyone. To open the Q&A or the chat panel, you may find those icons in the bottom middle of your screen for those features. And to answer the most commonly asked questions, as always, we will send a follow-up email to all registrants within 2 business days containing links to the slides. And yes, we are recording and will likewise send a link to the recording to the session as well as any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you for our speaker for today, Dr. Peter Aiken. Peter is an acknowledged data management authority, an associate professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, president of Data International, and associate director of the MIT International Society of Chief Data Officers. For more than 35 years, Peter has learned from working with hundreds of data management practices in 30 countries, including some of the world's most important. Among his 13 books are many firsts. Starting before Google, before data was big, and before data science, Peter has founded several organizations that have helped more than 200 organizations leverage data-specific savings, which have been measured at more than 1.5 billion US dollars. His latest is Anything Awesome. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Peter to get today's webinar started. Peter, hello and welcome and Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you, Shannon. It's so good to have everybody online after a nice holiday season here, although it was a little crazy on the outside, but we won't worry about that. Today, we're going to talk about data strategy and particularly layer in some AI in here because AI is really an excellent extender of this. But I want to draw your attention to the little sticky note in the upper right-hand corner, which is really the essence of strategy. And that is that practice isn't something you do once and then you're good. It's something you do that makes you good. Very nice Malcolm Gladwell quote around that particular context. So let's do the bottom line up front here real quick. First of all, multi-page long-term strategies that I see people pay lots of money for and spend lots of effort on are generally, yes, less useful than the process of creating them. In other words, the product is not the point, the process is the point, because too much time can be spent writing in a perfect plan at the expense of equal effort that would help you become actually proficient in this. And that learning that as an iterative process, cycling through this is a really important aspect of it. Keep in mind, of course, we want you to use AI as much as you possibly can in that. So let's dive in. First of all, there's a fairly detailed amount of information in here. I'm going to draw your attention to the upper right-hand corner here where you can see it's a little star showing. Those of you that are familiar with Gemini know that's the Gemini output signal on that. And I've indicated that on the slides that I use Gemini output on so you could see what was going on there. But we're also going to talk about some other things. So again, don't try to read something like this when it comes up. It's actually very, very difficult. They are for reference, though. As Shannon said, you'll get a copy of the slides on it. And so when you do, you can come back and take a look at it. And if it still doesn't make sense, give me a call, of course, on that. Using my particular set of these, this is our university, and we've got these tools for everybody. I tend to stay in the Google side of things because I'm not as much of a coder as some other people are. So Google and Notebook LM are the two products I'll be talking about today. They are available free of charge. And that is something that if you're not looking at, you really should. So again, not an advertisement for Gemini, but it does tend to work out well in this particular context in here. And most importantly, I think, when you ask a question as a data governance professional, get it to do the first draft in many instances. So here's those of you that know me know I'm what's called a horse husband. And so I just said, hey, write a data governance charter for a small nonprofit that rescues horses. Man, that's a good first initiative out there. We're certainly worth looking at and improving on here. But something else about AI, real important to understand. This is Hannah Fry, who's a data scientist, and she's kind of buried the lead here. Her talk is titled Why You Should Be Polite to AI. It's actually no. What I really want you to take away from this is understanding that AI is really good at role playing. So I'll let Hannah speak for about 90 seconds
you've seen
here.
all sorts of posts telling you what prompt to use to get the most out of your language model. I think you can pretty much forget all of that because there's only really one important thing to remember, which is that the AI that we have now is really, really, really good at role playing. So you shouldn't talk to it like it's a Google search or like you're trying to extract information from it as though it's Wikipedia. Instead, you should talk to it as though it's an improvisational actor that can be any character imaginable. And the reason for this is that large language models, they don't store facts like it's a database, right? They generate responses dynamically based on having read everything that humans have ever written and the prompt that you give it. And that means that AI, the stuff we have now, it doesn't have this stable identity, right? It doesn't have a fixed worldview, it doesn't have personal beliefs. And so if you prompt it in a particular way, it will respond in kind. If you try and prompt it as though it's a Shakespearean bard, then it will give you a flowery response. If you try and prompt it as though it is an extremely effective and smart scientist, it will give you the relevant response. But if you prompt it as though it's an encyclopedia, it's going to try and sound like one, but it's still just performing a role, and you've effectively just restricted what it can do. So instead, what you should do is you should imagine that you're a film director, right? And that you have a character in mind, and then you should prompt your AI accordingly. So don't say, give me 3 interesting facts about science. Say, you are a world-renowned scientist with PhDs in biology and chemistry and physics, and your nephew says that science is boring. You only have a few minutes and you've got to give him counterexamples. What extraordinary stories do you use? And here is the big idea, right? If you are working with a character and you want that character to eagerly help you, whoever they are, it's probably better to be polite.
And again, the politeness issue and whether it costs a bottle of water or not is another questionable type thing. But I have worked with Hannah's advice for about the past year. And so here's a generalized prompt that you could use, or that I use to produce some of the things that are in here. You're a seasoned data governance professional or strategist who's helped dozens of organizations gain value from their efforts. You're able to translate complex topics into language and images that executives with a very short attention span are willing to follow. Please describe how AI can augment the efforts of doing something like that. And this is the kind of information that it produced as a result on that. Again, I'm not trying to show this as an example of specifically what you do. And you can see it's still AI because there's some misspellings and words in there. But the general stuff here is pretty good and useful enough to build upon on that. There's another one for summary of financial type things. What's the financial impact then? Well, if we're doing data governance without AI, it can take weeks and months, and with AI augmented governance, it can take hours and minutes. Again, that's a little bit of an overpromise. But you can see here the kinds of things that go about this. You can move it from reactive to proactive, and in fact, all the way change around. So the capacity play is that data stewards and engineers spend lots of time doing manual tagging and mapping and things like that. And AI can be really helpful with automating the janitorial tasks that are around that. Most importantly, in types of organizations, a 50% reduction in time to market is something that management will be paying attention to as we get into these things. Again, just continuing on with the background on this, which is the tool set that we're using. Transition from a manual oversight to an AI augmented framework to unlock agility and reduce operational overhead, right? Well, what's going on here? We're talking about dark data, human error, things like that. Deploying automated PII discovery and anomaly detection gives you 100% coverage as opposed to checking things in order to do this. So these are all things that the Gemini product has just simply output in response to queries along the lines here. Here's another one, the agility play, if you're really concerned about it. Agility is business users don't trust the data and they only trust people, so you have to follow all of this around. Very, very nice articulations of these things, and it's free. So the moniker on this is to say that your job will not be taken by AI, but your job will be taken by somebody who knows how to use AI better than you. And that's why I think it's incumbent on everybody who's in a professional role today to figure out what types of things they're using. The other toolkit piece in here is another piece from from Google called Notebook LM. And they always want to introduce it with strange looking characters here, but I'll just give you a brief example of how it has been useful in some areas. As most of you know, I'm a university professor. I'm starting my 34th year at this university. And as a university professor, I can assure you that I spend every Friday afternoon working my way through the 162 policies that I'm supposed to be familiar with as a faculty person here. not. All right. Now, there's no way I'm going to spend my time looking through these things, but I did take and load them all into Notebook LM. So these are all the policies that are down here. This is just the policies. And when you ask it questions, it will give you answers that pertain to the universe that you have drawn a line around by putting things inside this Notebook LM. By the way, the only difference between the paid version and the unpaid version is the amount of capabilities that are in here in order to see this. One of the things, just to draw your attention to it real quick, you can click on this audio overview piece and it will go off and make a podcast. So if you have a very dense topic that you're trying to get across to somebody, or even just learn yourself, you can take it and it'll give you a very good overview and turn it into a 20-minute podcast for things. There are video pieces, mind maps, reports, flashcards, infographics, and it's all free. It will outpoint PowerPoint slides for you if that's your desire on this. So wonderful set of technologies here that we can really do some useful things with here.
All right, let's be real for a sec.
Okay.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, actually looks forward to spending their precious weekend
Right.
buried in a stack of university policies, like trying to find like a really exciting, thriller novel in the library rule book section, right? Who does that?
Nobody.
But that's why we're here.
That's right.
We're your trusty guides for this stuff. Yeah. We're going to take you on a deep dive into these
Again, just a small little snippet of a 20-minute output. Very nice conversation between two people. It supports different learning styles. Some executives, as you know, hate PowerPoints. Well, maybe they'll listen to a podcast about it. So let's look at the program here. Again, the focus of data strategy is something that I've been working with for years and years. And I kind of put it together in a piece that I'm just going to read to you here because it makes a lot of sense. The data strategy specifies how data assets are to be used to support organizational strategy. We'll look a little bit at data. What is strategy? What's a data strategy? And of course, the place they work together is with governance in here. So strategy is completely necessary for effective data governance to improve your organization's data, to improve the way people use their data, because we can't just improve the data. It's not sufficient. We also have to tell people how to use it better, because only when you have people who know how to use data and good data can you actually get to the point where the organization is highest and best use data supporting strategy. There are some prerequisites in here. I'll touch on three: lack of organizational awareness, eliminating barriers, and failure to compensate for competencies. In here are some. And then the last part we'll get into, and I alluded to this in the first piece, the data strategy cycles. It should be a cycle. It's not a 10-year plan. Nothing works that way when we're looking at. So we're going to go longer on this. And of course, we're going to come back at the end and eventually get back to a, excuse me, we're going to get back to a really nice Q&A section here at the end in order to do that. It'll be about 40 minutes from now. Anyway, let's talk about context. Strategy is an inherently repetitive process that can be easily improved, and that data strategy exists to support the organizational strategy, and the focus should be not on just the data, but improving data capabilities. The plans are of limited value, and they always discount the potential obstacles that you're going to have, and they tend to overemphasize technology. We know from years and years of research that 95% of our problems in many cases are people and process challenges, not the actual data problems that go with it. And finally, to get to nirvana, how does one get to Carnegie Hall? The answer is practice, practice, practice. Thank you, Malcolm Gladwell. Many people starting out in strategy think strategy is really complicated, and they're kind of not really, I don't want to say afraid of it, but they're not really comfortable with it. This is, and it's been verified on the internet in theory, so it's got to be true, right? But if you look out there, this is a 1957 version of Disney's strategy, business strategy. And you can see, just by looking at this, it's really good, and they've been following it, and it has produced tremendous success for them. Now, I don't know whether they've actually taken the strategy that they had and moved it into a data strategy. That may be something for ask somebody at Disney about. But again, this is just a wonderful piece of history here to be able to take a look at it. I give you the link in the upper left-hand corner that's there, but it shows how Disney became the behemoth that it has now become. That said, when you're in an organization, it can be difficult to perceive strategy at an IT project level. You may have a organizational strategy, and if it exists, there may be a singular strategy. But when we get into operational IT, you look at there are things that happen, and we get a message that comes in here. And of course, it's the game of telephone where things go across, things become confused, it's not well understood. Within a project, it can often be very difficult to see what happens in strategy. That said, we want to avoid the organizational IT strategy issues as much as we can. And strategy in general is to give us the purpose of what's going on. Because if we don't have a purpose, and the purposes are very simple: faster, better, cheaper, or less risky. Those are the four things that management cares about. And if you can't map what you're doing to them, it's going to be a challenge in that area. From a strategic perspective, we want everybody to keep doing the same thing that they're doing with some minor changes that we have in here. Overall, there's a great TED Talk with Simon Sinek. If you haven't had a chance, it's worth 10 minutes to go spend with him, but I'll try and do it even shorter. He says that as human beings, we are pretty good at describing what, but we are less good at describing how. And quite frankly, we're pretty bad as a species of describing why. Well, again, the strategy must provide that why, because if it doesn't, we don't know what we're trying to attempt to do here. I'll give you a quick example. Again, what motivates people is not what you do, but it's why you do it. And that's really, really critical. The Reverend Martin Luther King gave the "I have a dream" speech, not the "I have a plan" speech. So what is strategy? Well, we didn't even use the word until about 1950 or so, as Google mentions in documents of the time. And at that time, the management consultants of the world discovered strategy and decided they had to make a master plan or a game plan and a 1,000-point PowerPoint deck and a 100-page plan and all the rest of it. It's really not, because that then transforms strategy into a thing. And it's really not the right way to think about it. The original definition of strategy, which I think is the correct definition, is a pattern in a stream of decisions. This turns strategy as back to where it should be originally, which is much more of a process than as a thing in order to understand all of this. I'll give you a couple of quick examples here. Wayne Gretzky, the Canadian soccer great, said, "I skate to where the puck will be." That's a great strategy. All right. And it obviously provided well for him. On his Wikipedia page entry, he has conversations between himself and his dad that elicit this in a little bit more detail. Here's another quick example here. This is a little more detailed, but it's one we still teach in the armed forces colleges out here when we're teaching strategy. So the context here is Waterloo and Napoleon, and Napoleon's in the blue, and opposing the Napoleon are the British in red and the Prussians in black. You can see that those two armies combined are bigger than the French corps. Well, how do I defeat the competition when their forces are bigger than mine? Divide and conquer. Remember, it's a pattern and a stream of decisions here. So let's just take a quick look at how this goes. The reason they teach this is because Napoleon noticed when he was in this situation that the British were supplying their troops out of Ostend, which was miles away from where the Prussians were supplying their troops out of Liege. So he said, if I can hit them right in the middle, I can make those armies go backwards. Now, when you get hit, you tend to run towards safety rather than away from safety. Okay, so there's a two-part strategy. However, the first thing was that Napoleon's army had to turn to the right and defeat the Prussians, and then turn to the left and then defeat the British on this. So again, just to summarize, first of all, both armies hit the armies just the right spot, then everybody turn right and defeat the Prussians, and then everybody turn left and defeat the British. Oh, by the way, while they are shooting at you the entire time of getting this out. That's non-trivial strategy. Let me give you one more example here. Again, I think that's fairly complex. Here is Walmart's former business strategy. It was very simple, and it still is very simple today. Every day low price. Now, I spent 3 years with Walmart, really interesting organization, lots and lots of data, as you might imagine. But they've recently published something here now they're more complex piece on this. So what you're looking at here is what we're doing today is a people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel platform. Well, that's not as easy as everyday low price. And you can see, of course, it gave a little bit of pieces there. And again, lots and lots of things. So here's the 4 pillars of Walmart's strategy. Please don't try and read this now, but you can see the highlights. And omni-channel flywheel will get things out. And I just personally don't think it's a real personally, I think it's a interesting, auspicious timing that Doug McMillon stepped down as this new strategy was rolling out. Now, he's been very successful so far, but I think that once again, if you look at everyday low price versus the other things that I showed up there, it's going to be a little bit tricky at Walmart looking at how these things then start to go. Again, he helped Walmart grow in their sales by almost $150 billion. Actually, that's a little more than that, about $200 billion in there. And they thought he was going to stay longer, but he decided to not go any further with that. And I just think it's very much the case that that's likely to be not something that he's going to want to work on, or at least maybe finding it's a different way, perhaps. Sorry, I got off my slides here. Hang on, there we go. Get to the right point. That. And then there again, you can see it's a much more complex strategy than they were going to do before. Again, if I could sell Walmart short on a 10-year basis, I might think considerably about doing something like that. But as you can see, it's simply a lot more complicated. All right, there's Doug again. And there we go. Again, remembering strategy is a stream of decisions that have a pattern, or a pattern in a stream of decisions. And the important thing to remember about this is that strategy guides work group activities around this. The idea is when we're sitting around as a work group, we're trying to figure out what to do. We all bring our version of strategy to it and try to do things in the right direction. I keep hitting the back key. I'm so sorry here. Let's try that again. There we go. Work group. All righty. And there's a little bit of contextually important information on strategy as well. If we're the good guys on the left-hand side and the bad guys are over there, we might employ one strategy if we were in a contest against them. We might employ a different strategy if we are up here on the top and the bad guys have the low ground. We might still employ a third version of strategy if the bad guys have the top ground and the good guys have the bottom ground. Again, all of these things are critical in here, but the problem is a strategy that winds up on a shelf is simply not going to be useful. My favorite quote on strategy comes from our former president, Dwight Eisenhower, where he said, "In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." Some people like Mike Tyson's version of it, a little bit perhaps punchier, excuse the pun. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So let's look at what's going on here. Our data strategy should be the highest level of data guidance available that focuses data activities on business goal achievement and provide guidance when faced with a series of decisions or uncertainties. The data strategy must usefully articulate how data can be used to do this, and it usually involves a balance of remediation and proactive measures because so many organizations have so much data debt out there that it's a real challenge for them. We can look at some measures of strategy effectiveness. There should be, over time, a longer period in time. This is not something you will fix in months and weeks and quarters, but years as far as that goes, that there should be volume. It should be not a whole lot longer than the organizational strategy if you have the ability to measure between the two. There should be versions. Once you give somebody something labeled version 1, they won't be unhappy when you give them version 2. But if you give them a data strategy and then a year later say, well, we're going to do a different data strategy, it kind of catches people off guard. You can measure the comprehension that you have between the different groups, and that helps out quite a lot in terms of effectiveness. I've used this example from my friend and colleague, Dr. Chris Bradley, who says this is something that you can get to maybe with 3 to 5 years work. So this is aspirational, but I've not found any organization standing up an organization like this that could put this together in that kind of fashion really, really quick. So let's look at our various planning options that we have around this. The target here, our goal, success, whatever it happens to be, we could go through with one attempt, which makes numerous upfront assumptions and details objectives and things, or we could use this iterative strategic cycle, which slowly moves us closer, but with much more feedback as we're getting towards the final result. You'll see those little wheels come back a couple more times in the presentation, because as you do this strategy, you also notice that over time, the capacity and operations improvements become measurable and demonstrable. And then the focus, again, changes from reactive approaches to proactive approaches. So many organizations that I've worked with, however, think that these things on the left-hand side are what we should do for strategy. The courses, these are technologies. They are not strategic pieces. So you're not going to achieve your strategy by SAP. And again, nothing wrong with SAP, perfectly fine software, but it's not a strategy. So again, we're going to talk about how data strategy assets can be used. And I want to get you a sense of this cycle. So these are constraints in the upper right-hand corner there, the space, weight, flow, stress, deflection, all of those things are things that we'd like to eliminate from our process. So our strategic focus, however, is first of all going to be on space, whatever that is, right? And we're going to work on it as a group and collectively reduce the impact of that on it. And then the next cycle, we're going to focus on cost. And I'm probably at a way too high level here anyway, but these are things that you should have that would be extraordinarily useful to measure on this. Well, this is my secret sauce side. You'll see this again a couple more times as well. The AI sauce over here is, what is your organization strategy? Now, some people know it and it's really clear. Some don't. Ask Google, right? Because Google actually, I go into organizations like, where'd you get this information? I said, well, somebody leaked it out to the AIs and they know about it. So you can get that kind of information. Then what data strategy best supports those organizational objectives? You can say, given that my strategy is everyday low price, what are things in a generic sense that data strategies can be done to help those? And you can look among 16 or 17 examples that it gives you and pick 3 that would be extremely useful to you there. And then you can ask it to understand dependencies. Now, remember, AI is a B student. 85% of the material that comes out of here is extremely useful, but there's a good 15% that you're going to have to double check. So if you turn it in without going through it thoroughly, shame on you. Again, pattern and stream of decisions with AI. So we started there. Let's go to the next one, which is a data strategy is necessary for data governance. I mentioned data debt a couple times. Most people don't really understand what data debt is, but it's anything that helps slow progress, that helps to decrease the quality, increase the costs, and again, presenting greater risks to the organization. We need to look at that specifically because so much of the data that we have is chaff and not really wheat. When we look at overall these things, we first ask the question, is well-organized data more? The answer is, of course, yes. If you think of a book, you certainly don't want to read it without having all of the various things that we assume a book has, page numberings and things like that. By the way, this is a great reference here. How to Make Sense Out of Any Mess is a wonderful book by Abby Covert. It's available on Kindle. So if you have a Kindle subscription, you can literally go out and get it while I'm babbling at you here. But I want you to imagine taking Abby's book, taking the spine off of it and just distributing the papers without any page numbers and things. The knowledge goes away very, very quickly. So better organized data does increase in value, and 80% of your organizational data is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. I've never gone into an organization where they will admit to anything less than that, but I have gone to organizations when they say, around here, it's 90% of the data. Again, I hope you hear the whispers on that because it's part of the piece. So question is, who is uniquely qualified to accomplish this separation and understanding of all of this? And the answer, of course, is data governance professionals. So let's talk for just a minute about data governance. And there are some definitions that we've used here over the years. I tend to say that most of these are unfortunate because I want you to imagine jumping on an elevator and the boss jumps on and says, oh, you're doing data governance. How's that work out from a, no, or worse still, perhaps. And by the way, this is a really nice picture from John Wenfield. I want to make sure I give him credit. The link is up in the top there, where it really does explain this very, very nicely to everybody, but it's not where you want to start. Again, you want to do some things that get us into this gradually. And the first piece that you need to start with is an elevator pitch. You can imagine the boss jumping on the elevator and saying, tell me what the definition of data governance is. I don't really understand it. What are these decision rights and things? And and say, hey, data governance is managing data with guidance. That's a really good definition because it also implies that you wouldn't want your data managed without guidance. And the only thing I change is that the higher I go up the food chain in organizations, I add one word to it, managing data decisions with guidance, because that's really what we're talking about. We can't remain techie. So here's a couple of stories that we want to have. Somebody might on the technical side say, I want to do data governance to clean some data. Yawn. But if I say I'm going to decrease the number of undeliverable targeted marketing ads, ooh, I've got somebody's attention. If I'm going to reorganize the database, I think I'll go, do something else, wash my hair, right? If I say instead I'm going to increase the ability of the sales force to perform their own analyses, oh, yes, that's what I'm looking for. Develop a taxonomy. Don't get me wrong, I love taxonomies. But if we say instead we're going to create a common vocabulary, there is not a CIO in the world who says that their organization all speaks from the same sheet of paper. I'm going to optimize a query. Woohoo. On the other hand, I did this once. I shaved a second off of a task that ran 1 billion times a day. You can add those numbers up. Or my own favorite, I'm going to reverse engineer the legacy system. What? Well, I'm going to understand what's good about the old system so it can be formally preserved and make sure that the new system does that as well. But what was bad, so we could avoid the bad parts of all of this. Again, just different ways of understanding this, because after lots and lots of research, too many organizations simply put data in the hands of employees and expect them to be successful. Here are some numbers that will scare you. These are from a great set of research. The Data Literacy Project has been doing some really good work in there. I've actually got some updated numbers, and I'm going to go back and get them for the next set on this, but they've done some good work. Oh, what am I talking about? Well, when you hand data to people and ask them to make a decision on it, 52% of them will actually use the data to make that decision, but almost half of them will defer to their gut. Ooh, ouch. And when it gets to the C-level executives, it's 1/3 of them incorporating data, 2/3 incorporating their guts. When we're looking at all of this that's going on, 14% of people, when they're faced with data tasks, avoid it entirely. That's just crazy. I don't know how you would do the task. I don't know what your alternate method would be either. But maybe that's what they're calling ChatGPT now or something like that. The other thing I would avoid doing is trying to get it too complex. You need simple messages. Data strategy supports the organizational strategy. The data strategy tells the data governance effort how well and what data assets need better support in order to do this. Data governance then works with IT for delivery pieces. And again, IT supports strategy. So we have some feedback loops on there and things like that. Let's do a little bit different here too. Same type of thing, but we've got one more piece we're going to add to it, which is our data stewards. And the key there is to figure out what's the most effective use of our scarce resources. Well, the strategy is going to tell us what needs to be done, and the stewards are going to help us actually do it. All of those things, as I said before, should be expressed in terms of business goals and metadata. And it's important, it's critical that the stewards are able similarly to speak in both of those languages. As I mentioned before, I wouldn't give this kind of detail outside of a closed meeting for all of us, because what happens is when people look at all of the things that are going on here, and we're trying to explain them like that other chart I showed you a few minutes ago. In order to do that, the external comprehension has not been good. So we've got lots of things that we're doing with data. We'll just pick 3 of them out here for our particular purposes: data management, data governance, and data stewards. Trying to explain all that. You know what people here? Don't try and communicate that way. Tell them it's a data program. And if they're interested in learning more about the data program, no problem. We can go a little bit further down than that. So we're back to our secret sauce here. Again, what we're looking for is AI-aided work products, your organization strategy, your organizational objectives and data strategy mappings, and some sense of priorities that can be gained from this. Really, really super help. What are the data components of your organization strategy? Now, again, if you have access to your strategy, feed it in, and you'll be surprised that it will give you some very good results on that. I get just an example here. This was a group that I worked with for a number of years, really fine group that does good work. And they came to me one day and said, we're kind of disappointed because we've been working on trying to get management to pay more attention to data, and it only showed up in one place in our strategic initiatives. You can see I've circled it right there. Implement enterprise data analytics and information management program. Great, glad it's on the strategic list. But I also said, look, do you think you can do any of these things? Increase operational efficiencies, conduct core process reviews, and prioritize. All of these things required. In fact, the entire thing requires data. It's just a matter of putting on your data goggles and understanding in order to do that. So here's our pieces here. What does a SWOT analysis reveal about the robustness of the data practices? Now, if your AI doesn't have information on your practices, you can ask it in general. Where are organizations generally deficient in this area? It actually gives you really good, again, I can't tell you how much information I've brought inside of a corporate wall, and they're going, we haven't given you access to this stuff. How do you know it? Well, ChatGPT knows it. Then you can ask it, what are obvious synergies between the two to try and find that really nice lighthouse project where you've got both business objectives and IT objectives solved by a single data fix around all of that. Really, really useful. You're going to have to spend some time doing this, but that's the whole purpose, isn't it? You want to practice it and get better at it. Because again, the motivations for doing more with data are that we want to improve our organization's data, because all data points to where valuable things are located. Data has intrinsic value by itself, and data has inherent combinatorial value in order to do this. But 3 times now, you also have to improve the way your people use data, because you value data to measure, manage, and motivate change on all of these things. And finally, only when you have both improved your organization's data and the way people use its data, the way your people use its data, you can now start to gain that competitive advantage in order to do this. And I'm going to give you a story here about Rolls-Royce just very briefly. It's a wonderful story. Rolls-Royce, this is the part of the company that makes the large jet engines that go on things that safely take us around the world as we're going places. And the old model of business for Rolls-Royce was to sell things. In this case, the things were jet engines. But the problem was they were treated like a vendor. They couldn't have conversations with the airlines that they wanted to have. So they decided to create a new model. The old model was to sell things. The new model is to sell service. That is, hours of powered thrust. They had a great name for it, power by the hour, to keep things going. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the conversations. They looked at NASCAR and Formula One in order to do this, realizing that neither Rolls-Royce or the airlines make any money when the engines are not pushing people around the world for money, right? We've got a problem. So here real quick is the Indianapolis 500, the way we changed tires in 1950.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
So our measure here is 2 tires changed in 67 seconds at the Indianapolis 500. Don't blink. New measure, 4 tires, 4 seconds. Rolls-Royce wanted to have a conversation with the airlines that said, we can help you change engines because we've learned from what NASCAR and Formula One do in changing engines, and we believe we can help do that. So we can now have that conversation. The real question for this is, when was this model invented? Well, they celebrated its 50th anniversary in 1962. In 2012. So that means it was invented in 1962. Again, really, really interesting work around all of these pieces. So let's move to the next section, lack of prerequisites that are there. There's just not many organizations that are ready for this. And a quick read ahead here, I sampled Morgan Freeman on this just to make sure it works. So we start out with some business needs, and again, we're going to make a solution, and that's great. And, we'll just sort of put something together for you, right?
This is wrong.
Thank you, Morgan Freeman. This is wrong. Yes, how should we do it properly? Well, let's back up a little bit and take a look. Business needs also have to take into account the current state of the organization. Then and only then can we set reachable strategic data imperatives, and data governance should be the major source of those inputs. Not even, you may be able to get a set of notebook LMs that do it as well. I mentioned there are 7 deadly data sins. That's another talk entirely. Data leadership, robust framework for sharing data, data programs aligned with IT projects, managing expectations, sequencing strategy properly, and failing to address cultural and management changes, but really not understanding data-centric thinking are the main parts. And we're still seeing this. There's contention between CIOs and CDOs. I wrote the first book on chief data officers back a long time ago. And when it got translated into Chinese, I thought it was really funny. They came up with the title Chief Data Officer Combat. There are lots of people who are confused by this. And again, it seems threatening in some cases. This is just to say that there is a group of professionals out there, change management and leadership, that can help everybody get on that same piece of paper and turn the corners that need to be done. Again, I like this one as well, unlocking something, right? Well, we're trying to unlock value in this case. And the best framework I've seen for this is one developed by Mary Lippert a couple of years back. It's actually in the 80s on this, where she said, if I walk into an organization and I see vision, skills, incentive, and an action plan, I'll also see frustration because they don't have resources. And this only works when you click all of those 5 pillars in order to make this go forward. I have a short little case study that you're welcome to download at some point and take a look at to see if that's of help there as well. So again, let's look at what's going on, right? Well, once again, the AI-aided work products can be your organization strategy and its data strategy. You can look at the objectives to data strategy mappings, and again, the organizational strategy to data practice mappings, because your data practices are also going to be important there. You can look at SWOT results and look at synergistic opportunities there. So what opportunities exist for AI to supplement existing data governance training, especially to those outside of the process? What a great question. Again, gives some really good answers. What opportunities exist for specifically reducing your organization's cloud costs? If you aren't looking at cutting cloud costs, it is the biggest source of untapped revenue in your organizations. The cloud companies are just raking you guys over the coals in order to do this. All right, so let's get down to the cycling part, because again, it becomes, relatively speaking, a process that you want to practice. So here's our data strategy framework. We already talked about that not being the right way to do it and this being the correct way to do it, but we need to go one step further than that. If you only deliver business values, my guess is that you will run into problems at some point in the near future where you're not getting capabilities. And if you only focus on capabilities and say the business value will come down the road in 5 years, you're probably going to be meeting the new CEO on the process, maybe on your way out too. So again, be careful with these things. Make sure that you balance the value that you come out with against new capabilities, because both of them are going to be key in order to do this. Again, another Morgan Simple piece. I've seen some people that say a data strategy should be a combination of your data governance strategy, your metadata strategy, your data quality. I'm not going to read all these to you, but you get the picture. And the problem with this is that most organizations don't have these things ready. And even if you did, trying to get them all focused is not right.
This is wrong.
Thank you again, Morgan Freeman, right? So what should we be doing? Strategy evolves periodically. I get space, right, just like we did before, and I'm going to go around the strategy cycle in order to address it. And if it's addressed, we can come back out of that and then look at the next one. When the data debt gets reduced, we can certainly cycle through and work on the next phase. Then strategy cycle 2, we can focus in on cost. Once again, around that cycle, is it solved? Great. If not, we keep at it or reevaluate. But the point is, it's constant. Now, I just need to tell you a little story because it's a really relevant one. When I got together with my spouse 20 years ago, and she said, well, look, if you want to have any business conversation, by the way, she's an accountant. She said, if you want to have any business conversations with me, you must read this book first. What? I got to read a book before I can have a conversation with you? But being a properly trained husband, I read the book and said, oh, I understand why. And I would urge all of you to do this. I still push this into my classrooms. The book is available on Amazon. I looked just the other day. There are some used copies for $6. It is absolutely worthwhile to do that. Nothing wrong with paying full price for it, but you don't need to. What is in this book? This is called The Theory of Constraints by Elihu Goldratt. And again, from Wikipedia, you can see here, it's a management paradigm that views any system as being limited in achieving its goals by a small number of constraints. There's a few things that are blocking you, find them, fix them, and move on to the next one. Because there's always going to be one constraint. It's the weak link in the chain. And this is what we want to do. The book actually traces the fortunes of Unico. And if you happen to like that book or remember it from years ago, the follow-on to it is called It's Not Luck. And it's even better than the first one, but the goal needs to be read in that order. So the goal and then It's Not Luck, really wonderful books to do, because each cycle then has a specific purpose. So what is the theory of constraints cycle? Well, again, we look at it like this and we say we identify the current constraints, exploit it, which is decisions about how best to make it work better for everybody, subordinating all the other non-constraints and alleviating the constraint unless we don't get it right. So if we look at it from a data perspective, it's a little bit different, but I think it still works. In your analysis of how data can best support the organization's strategy, one thing is blocking you the most. Identify it. Again, determine how to fix that one thing, make sure that nothing else is competing for time and resources and attention, and then restructure to support a further capability on that. When you're done, repeat. Do you see the lather, rinse, and repeat cycle in here? Yes, really, really good. In fact, if you look at it really hard, it starts to look an awful lot like a Deming quality cycle. The older I get, sorry to pull age on you guys, the more everybody's fancy methodologies end up looking like plan, do, check, act, PDCA. Very, very famous in order to look at this. You also need to understand the value chain analysis for your organization. Where is it that your data is adding value to the organization? Who knows? The data professionals, the knowledge workers have a 10x multiplier if you can make them more productive and how to use data better. That's tremendous. The intellectual tasks that help build on the organization's unique competitive advantages go in there. So identify those value chains, determine the activity's costs and values, and identify the strategic competitive opportunities. So again, if you might have a query that you saved a second off of it, that may be a strategic piece in the sense that if you're trying to get onto Ticketmaster and get Taylor Swift tickets faster than everybody else, that may be a way to do it. I'm just completely making up that example there for everybody. So I hope you're getting the idea here of these strategic cycles. Again, as you go through them again and again, over time, your capacity will increase in improving your operations, and the focus will change from reactive fighting data debt to proactive, really putting things on the table. Critical, by the way, that your strategy focus on both those reactive and positive pieces. If you get really good at this, I've seen organizations where they will start up multiple strategic cycles. They'll get one going, they'll get two going, and I've seen one company that tried to work with three of them. Again, lots of people working within these things and keeping the cycles moving all the way around. So I asked the ChatGPT again, or the Google, what are the key characteristics of successful data governance, and make me a PowerPoint slide for it. This one doesn't work. You can see, again, I don't mind showing the things that don't work, but the answers were good. Clear roles and responsibilities, comprehensive data policies, centralized metadata management, robust data quality management, strong data security and privacy controls, effective data stewardship, data-driven culture, and continuous improvement and adaptability. Again, this is one of the slides. You can take it and read it later. In fact, most of the rest of these are going to be in that fashion in order to produce this. So I'm going to look at each of them very, very briefly as I work our way back to the top of the hour here. First one, again, clear roles and responsibilities, automating role clarity and compliance. The idea of manually mapping these things to thousands of data items is slow and prone to error. Machine learning can help you quickly analyze the content and get these things to the right people by auto-suggesting stewards, by using usage and access monitoring and by monitoring policy roles around all of these things. The clearer roles, the faster compliance, and the freeing up of the human stewards is something that can be measured and that people will appreciate. Even better than that, the AIs understand a RACI matrix and a CRUD matrix in there. So you can take a bunch of roles and things and fit it in and say, make a RACI matrix for me here, and it will do a really good job of giving you that B-level first draft, and I'll take 85% anytime on it. This is the second piece. Again, policies and standards from policy to power, right? In other words, policy implementation and tagging. If I took all those policies that VCU had and tagged them on the way in, it would have been useful. I didn't. I really don't care that much. And we can get into automated compliance monitoring within that as well. Similarly, from a standards and stewardship perspective, we can look at data quality improvement. It can learn what a good pattern of data and suggest ideas and dynamically generate standards on this. It understands these concepts. So this shifts the DG from a policing organization to a policing to a partnering organization, because these organizations generally want data governance to be seen as a contributing factor in order to do this. Here's our third one, the centralized metadata management. It's a force multiplier on this. So why we need to do this? Well, if we start to replace or enhance our existing set of tools with AI, we can deliver faster, we can reduce risk, and we can give more democratized data access for these. Number 4, again, robust data quality management, right? Well, detection anomaly, self-learning rules, intelligent cleansing, proactive governance, all are parts of this. By the way, not all of these, of course, are going to apply to you. And so you want to make sure that you figure out what are the things that you learn. That's where that Notebook LM product can be helpful, because then it will start to learn as you learn. Hey, neat stuff here, right? Number 5, strong data security. Now, I know that not all CDOs or data governance efforts are focused on security, but again, finding the sensitive data, enforcing the access rules, staying compliant, and protecting data that's in use or in transit are 4 key areas that you certainly can be looking towards. Again, it gives you real-time visibility, gives the opportunity to implement zero trust automation, de-risk the business, and secure data utilities around this. Again, I hope you're getting this. There's some things that it'll do, but they're going to help you do what you're trying to do better. It's not going to do any of this stuff for you until you create something that is useful for your organization. Create an effective data stewardship program. Again, discovery and classification, policy enforcement, quality, remediation, document context. Yes, we have seen examples of self-healing data where things look at it and they look at it. You remember, okay, back up a little bit here. If some of you have an engineering background, you may remember self-correcting error codes that are done. These are based on mathematical formulas, so that when a packet on the internet comes in damaged, it can either be discarded or sometimes repaired, depending on what happens within certain constraints. You can do that exact same thing at the data level rather than at the packet level. And this will give you business-specific items that will be extremely helpful for you in terms of moving forward with these. Each of these is a chapter in a new book or something, so that you can sit down and figure all of it. What's data-driven culture? Well, what we're really trying to do is help everybody see through these data goggles. And again, efficiency and coverage. So we shift from policing to strategy, risks and compliance, where we put up dynamic security shields that are there, cultural adaptation, right? Again, the data usage is kind of effortless because we can find it out much, much faster than most people are able to catch it, given those set of circumstances. We're doing an awful lot around talking about data culture these days. Just keep it in mind for a future webinar, but it turns out if you look at real culture, what people do for real culture, there's a bit of it that is really sort of problematic, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to map it just yet. So worthwhile to take a look at some of the cultural issues. That's probably something we'll save for another webinar at some point in here. Number 8, continuous improvement and adaptability. Again, we don't want to just stop, right? Everything that we do is vested in continuous improvement in here. So you can see there's quite a lot that goes on. If you remember the stress testing that the banks did back during the financial crisis, right? Really important work that they're getting into on that. It's a huge amount of things that go in there, but we can actually stress test the policies in this same way to do this. Again, automated verification, real-time discovery, these are all things that you can get. So those are 8 different perspectives how AI can help specifically about data governance. There's a lot more that can go on, but we'll get to it in a future piece. So let's sort of take a step back and see where we've been for the past 50 minutes. A data strategy is what you need to specify how your data assets are going to be used to support the organizational strategy. In other words, if you don't understand the organizational strategy, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense to people. So by understanding the organizational strategy and then figuring out specifically how data is going to support it, you have some real opportunities here. A quick note of caution. Oftentimes the data strategy is people try to make it subordinate to an IT strategy. IT is primarily a project-oriented discipline, and therefore it is really important to make sure you are not done that. Remember that slide earlier where the organizational strategy filters in through IT projects. It's just not working when we try to do that. So go directly from organizational strategy to a data strategy and show how you're going to use data to support the organizational strategy. If you remember that red slide I showed you a few back, you can see almost instantly how any of those pieces in there need specific data items in order to do this. And by the way, the way you say it, I'm going to get back there for a quick second. Normally I wait till the questions before we do this, but let me just get back to there real quick. Oh, never mind. I can't get there. Anyway, we'll probably do that in a question. All right. So data strategy, how data assets are used. That if you don't have the data strategy, it's really hard to tell what to do next in data governance. And when I say next, that's because there are some dependencies in here. Somebody says, I got to fix this data, but that data has that data and that data that you need to fix before it can get to your place. Those are what we call, Tom Redmond calls hidden data factories out there. Really great term. Business people like to take that. But the data strategy is necessary because we don't have the resources to do everything that needs to be done as fast as we'd like to do it. So we need some sense of priority. This is what's going to give your data governance a little bit of fire in their bellies in order to do this. And remember, the goals are to improve your organization's data, to improve the way people use their data, and to improve how people use their data to support organizational strategy. There are some effective data strategy prerequisites that you need to look at. I skipped through them briefly. They're in the book, of course. Lack of organizational readiness, those 7 deadly data sins, and the failure to comprehend the data in there for lack of competencies, because we can't just have it done with people just don't have a good data background and all this stuff. And finally, the last piece, of course, is the data strategy cycles. These cycles are critical. Again, lather, rinse, and repeat. We're going to do this. Okay, that worked. Now, how well can we improve our process? What can we look at for the business next? All right, we're going to deliver equal parts of business value and competency development. If we just do one or the other, I've not seen those work. And map out where data is adding value. What are our data value chains in those organizations? Because if we have those data value chains, it becomes a whole lot easier to say something is important versus not important. So we're headed towards the top of the hour and the questions and answers on this, but let's just go back to the bottom line one more time. In 40 years, I've seen a lot of data strategies. I've seen a lot of organizations try to work with data strategies. And the problem is they focus on the product rather than the process. And the products are not really useful. They end up sitting on a shelf in most cases. That people spend way too much time perfecting a plan and accomplishing that perfection in the plan at the expense of becoming proficient in the process. You need to rebalance your time. You need to say, what can I do that will give me some results? Again, think of it another way. Somebody hires you to get data governance chief, you think, wow, great, I'm going to do some really good data governance around this. And you get to an organization and they don't have a data strategy. How are you supposed to know what to do? Data strategy is an inherent necessary piece of glue between what the organization is doing and what you're trying to do with data. Otherwise, it runs the risk of becoming not interesting to the business, which means in a time of constraints, you're going to put too much effort in it that way. That process of cycling, going through a series of improvements on a regular basis, really critical to make sure you're doing this, as opposed to I've got a grand plan and we're going to follow the grand plan to the end at the end of 10 years. And gosh, if you are not using AI to extend your specific knowledge worker capabilities, you need to. I would also urge you to start becoming the lead advocate for AI in your organizations, because it's likely that nobody else has done that yet. And if nobody's doing it and you're doing it, you're going to get to be the sort of expert in that area. I tell the students that are coming out of classes these days, they're probably going to be more expert about AI than many of the businesses that are hiring them. Not, of course, true if you're going to work for Google or Meta or something like that, but we're just talking about normal businesses now. Okay, so we're back at the top of the hour here. Again, just a quick look at the books. You can get 25% off that data strategy book if you're interested by heading over to the website. Got some upcoming events. Next in February, we're going to do Architecting for the Future using AI to design AI-ready data ecosystems, data modeling mastery in March, structuring data for AI analytics or anything else. And we're going to hit data stewards in April. Back that, we go back over to Shannon.
Peter, thank you so much for kicking off the new year with such a great presentation and great topic. If you have questions for Peter, feel free to put them in the Q&A panel. And just to answer the most commonly asked questions, just a reminder, I will send a follow-up email by end of day Thursday for this webinar with links to the slides, links to the recording of this session. So Peter, diving in here, what about quote unquote data production? Should it not be part of the data strategy?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it depends on how you define data production. I've seen that term bandied about quite a bit. But if you are in the process of producing data, a really great book to take a look at is The Corporate Information Factor by Bill Inman and Claudia Imhoff. Really, really good focus there. If you are producing data, yes, that can be engineered in a way that will be extremely helpful to you. Some really great concepts come across from the manufacturing environment in this case. Great question. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Peter, how do you incentivize an organization to adopt data stewardship? This always seems to receive great resistance, or at least lethargy.
A great question. So, organizations that haven't gotten on board yet is the way I will characterize what we're looking to answer. And when you look at what's going on in organizations, I don't have a slide for this one, but there's a really good study by a guy named Randy Bean, who's been asking the same group of thousands of people around the world questions about data. And what he has discovered over the years is that there are really, really wonderful people responding to these things. But when you ask them the question, again, year after year after year, are your problems primarily data, technology, or are they primarily people and process? And the answer is people and process by a 10-to-1 ratio on this. So when you look around your organization and say, oh, okay, so we've got probably we're atypical, right? Or maybe not, but we're an organization, and we're going to have some data questions that are related to people and process issues around data, not around technology. What group here is going to fix that? Is that an IT help desk? No. In fact, I'll give you an example that happened to me right yesterday. I came in yesterday, it's the first day of classes here at VCU. So I came in and did printing off my class rolls, because of course students change the rolls right up until the class time. So you want to make sure you get the most up-to-date roll. And I'm trying to get onto the network so I can print out their pictures, which is PII information, right? So it's carefully controlled, as it should be. And I start to get on, and all of a sudden, there's I can't get to the system that I used to be able to get to. And I remember I've been at the university 34 years here, so I kind of know the systems. I kind of know where things are. So I know who to call, and I called up and said, oh, I can't get on the system. Oh yeah, we make you use a VPN now that we're on campus. What? Yeah, but I only found that by going to the help desk, which of course I was not a good place to go. And I don't know, somebody owns that system, call the person who owns the system. I called that person. They eventually called down and found out in order to do this. Yeah, a steward is specifically designed to help you with that role. And if you don't have that established in your organization, it becomes harder and harder because you have to start from scratch and do this each time. What I would suggest instead, exactly, and I think this is what the questioner is asking, is to say, look, when we're looking at these things here, the stewards are going to be the people who we can use to help address some of these issues. If we don't have them, we're going to have to get somebody else to do it, and nobody else has the time and effort in order to do this. So take those stewards and first of all say, who else? If not a steward, then whom are going to address those problems? And the answer is usually, I don't know. So again, great question. Thank you for asking that. We've got one, like I said, in April coming up on stewards. We'll dive into that topic more at that point.
Yeah, very appropriate. Somebody just asked me for the links to the future webinars. So the link for the April data storage webinar is in the chat there if you want to register for it.
Super.
So Peter, are data catalogs still as relevant in an era where we have access to AI, which can give us data about data on demand?
Yes, and really what you want to look at is trying to enhance your existing catalog with some AI. Let me go back to illustrate this. Again, great question, and I think it's really, really relevant for us here. So let me just pick up a slide, which is to say, strategy with the organization. Again, our governance professionals are going to be the ones that are going to keep all up to date on that. Sorry, Shannon, something distracted me. Could you repeat the question again? It's a problem with doing this in an office, right?
No problem. Are data catalogs still as relevant in an era where we have access to AI, which can give us data about data on demand?
Exactly. Thank you. Let's just have open door policies so somebody pop their head in. When you look at a data catalog, and again, let's be careful with our terms because none of this is going to work unless we have one said we're all on the same sheet of paper, right? Which is what the data catalogs do for you. The example that I was going to, I know where I was going. I was going to the example here, which is our little AI piece. There we go. Okay, so we're back here at this piece where I was talking about my Friday afternoon VCU policy study session, which does not exist, right? But if I'm looking in here, I could put all of those PDF files in a file and confine a search to that file and get the answer to which policies in VCU should I examine if I've got problems of type A or type B or whatever. When you have it in this notebook LM, it's almost exactly the same thing as your data dictionary. You can say, look, I'm looking for this sort of stuff conceptually, and it goes from taking just the keyword search enhancements to actually figuring out what those keywords mean and what you are really trying to figure out in order to do this. And I haven't seen any products on the market yet. I know that everybody's saying they're enhancing their products with it. I can just imagine what an AI enhanced data catalog would look like once Informatica or whomever gets finishes being absorbed by Salesforce. Somebody will get to work on it soon, and we'll see what sort of things come out of there. But yes, and again, if you guys have them, reach out. I'd love to feature them in a future opportunity like this. But once again, before we had AI, we could do a search on strings. Now we can do a search on concepts, and that's a huge, huge advantage. Again, great question. Thank you.
Very good question. So, Peter, can you explain a layman example of dependency of data strategy on data governance?
An example of data strategy on data governance. Let's think about that for just a minute. I'm guessing that in this case, we're looking back at this type of a scenario here where we've got organizational strategy, and then we're trying to tell data governance how we use the strategy to do this. So governance, for example, might do a survey, come up with a list of 10 things that need to be fixed before we can be perfect nirvana data people in order to do this. But if we do that in isolation, we might start with the A's or the Z's and work our way backwards or forwards, right? Just as an orderly piece. If we're looking at a data strategy component in here, the organizational strategy may say, well, first of all, we have to get everybody's shoe size. And once we have everybody's shoe size, then we can start to turn around and sell them things that are related to their shoe size. Again, I'm making the example up here. If you have the data strategy as a piece in between there, you can make that organizational component, figure out which pieces of data are related to shoes and sizes and gathering shoe sizes and all the rest of that, which probably has some consent in there. Let's be real careful with all of those things. And then say to the data governance group, hey, you guys are doing great. There's good stuff happening here. Next cycle, this is one that you should definitely investigate. That's the whole purpose of the cycles, is to quickly and easily go around, find and fix something and get it to work. Then you can fix something else and get it to work better, right? Yeah, great question.
Indeed. So, Peter, have you seen any AI help with data lineage?
Yes, tremendous things. And this is the area I've seen most people get in trouble with first. So let's just clarify the terms here. When we're talking about lineage or provenance and asking the question, can AI know anything about where data came from? You might start that in your own organization and say, look, I'm looking at this kind of thing here, and I've got an SAP system. It will actually tell you which tables in SAP that stuff is likely to reside in. It won't know anything about your systems, but it's looked at so many of everybody else's. The answer is likely to be close to what you need to have in order to come up with that. Really, really tremendously good in order to do this. And they can add tagging. And when you add the tagging, you can also include a human check in the process, so that somebody, instead of, oh my gosh, I finished my document and now my corporate, document filing standard says I need to put 10 tags on it in order to get it right, but I'm tired, I'll do that next time, and the document ends up without the tags. Well, an AI system can go through your inventory of those things and figure out which ones you have properly tagged, properly not tagged, and suggest tags to you and say, hey, it looks to me like this document could benefit from having these 16 tags on it, or these 1, 2, 3 tags on it. And by the way, of course, there's always a spot for you to suggest a new one in order to do that. If you want to see how that works, open up the Photos application in the Mac OS system, and you can ask it now about some concepts in there. They're very much like that data cataloging question somebody asked a few minutes ago. Again, really good question. The provenance issue is one that organizations are going to be looking at from a reliability and policy perspective more in the future, particularly those of you that are in Europe and dealing with the GDPR types of regulations that are there.
Thank you. So, Peter, effective AI-enabled data governance depends on appropriate technology enablement. Do you have any recommendations on the technologies we should consider?
Well, my guess is that things are moving so rapidly that we're going to see two things happen here that'll be very interesting. One, if you remember the clouds when they first started showing up, oh, we got this on this cloud, so everybody should buy that cloud. And now somebody else comes up with another one and they've got it there. We've got that down to a dull roar now. Most of the cloud services have identical capabilities in there. As soon as Amazon comes up with one, Google and Microsoft put theirs in, and vice versa. And there's dozens and dozens of smaller players that are coming into this and actually undercutting the big three in terms of charges for them as well. That is making a difference in the marketplace out there. So when you look at that kind of a situation, what you end up with is organizations that are trying to figure out how they can make the best use of what's going on. And anything that you can do to enhance that is going to be seen as a plus. But you also run the risk of relying too much, having a junior person go in there and just assume the AI is correct, or that a B grade is good enough, and turning that stuff in. And you've seen lawyers and other people embarrassed because of some of the bad results that have come out from over-reliance on this. Again, it's an extension. It's the idea that your job won't be taken by AI, but that somebody who knows how to use AI better than you we'll get that. Jenna, did I answer all the parts of that?
You did. Thank you.
All righty.
Yes. And continuing on here, so many great questions, and we've got lots of time. We've got about 15 minutes left. Peter, will the advent of artificial superintelligence finally rid the world of these pesky humans? No more problems with people or process, everything just running smoothly anonymously. Is there always going to be a need for a human in the loop, Peter?
So a real serious topic, and it's worthy of a thoughtful response on this. My own thoughts on this are largely influenced by a book called The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. Remember, AI was set up originally not to be intelligent, but to simulate human intelligence. And I think it's doing a very good job of simulating that human intelligence. But given that type of a scenario, I think it's really, really challenging for people to overly rely on this. The people of the world that talk about, what is automated general intelligence or super intelligence and all the rest of these things, I don't think that's going to happen here. Let me just give you the sort of nutshell of this. But again, really good book if you want to dive into the topic, The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. It's Eric Larson is the author on that. There are three types of thinking in AI right now. We have deductive reasoning, which is A, then B, therefore C, right? We have inductive reasoning, which says a little bit differently. We're trying to figure out what might be occurring. We're getting really good with the deductive reasoning. We're getting better with inductive reasoning, but it turns out there's a third type of reasoning that we as human beings use, and that is called abductive reasoning. This isn't a lecture on AI, but if you look up abductive, I hadn't even known the term existed, but it does, has been around for hundreds of years. This is the idea that when you walk into a room, you immediately can read the room. I use two examples of it. If I'm babbling at folks and you guys are waiting and you're hungry and we've gone over an hour and you're an hour late for lunch, I better figure out pretty quickly that you guys are hungry, tired, and a little bit cross in order to have a good session with them, or else, right? Another way to think of it is the crime scene investigators who can walk into a room and, I'm not a crime scene investigator. I've watched lots of television programs. That doesn't make me a crime scene investigator. And they can look at a blood spatter and figure out, oh, well, this happened here and then this and then this. That abductive reasoning would require so much computational power that if computers got 1,000 times faster at a rate that's 1,000 times faster than anybody's predicted, and that 1,000 times more capable, we still wouldn't be even close to having the compute capability to walk into a room and figure out what was going on. So I am not worried about automated general intelligence. I do believe that people will be in the loop. If you think about it, the logical extension of automated general intelligence is, why would they need the people at all? And all of a sudden, we're all in the Matrix. If you haven't seen the Matrix in that context, you need to go see it, because it's the same story they've told for years and years and years, just told in a slightly different way around. Again, great question. Thank you for asking that.
So many great questions. So, Peter, how do you distinguish a governance gap, missing policy, unclear authority, from an execution gap, people ignoring policy?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Shannon?
Sure. Yeah. How do you distinguish a governance gap? So, like a missing policy, unclear authority, from an execution. Oh, you just started some music, I think.
I know. Something's going on here. Hang on a quick second. Sorry, we will get this. I think we had a power glitch here, and it jumped the music piece to start. And I still haven't heard your question yet.
Yes, great question too. So, how do you distinguish a governance gap? So, like a policy that's missing unclear authority, from an execution gap. So, like somebody's ignoring a policy.
Absolutely great. So there's different types of evidence for each. Of course, if you have a policy gap, you probably have a set of policy libraries like I showed you earlier on there. And you can, once again, ask them and say, look, other organizations have these types of collections. What types of policies do these have? We did an AI-based project this semester. This last semester in my class, we were looking at a specific governance in a government organization. And that government organization couldn't let the students in. It was just not possible to give them access to it. So we had the students do these affinity kind of things where they looked around and went, oh my goodness, this is really cool over here. And these counties of these size had these types of things that were needed. And this happened here. Again, the ability of these things to pull up, but you've got to frame the questions properly. That's the real key. If you can say, look, I'm in a county, I don't have access to my own types of technology pieces here, but I want to know what counties like mine will eventually look like. Give me a set of comparables. We do it here at the university all the time. We compare ourselves to specific types of universities that in this case support business schools, because that's what I'm in order to do that. I hope that's helpful, because it really, really is super useful.
I will let the questioner expand if they want more details, but um, and it is such an important topic. But moving on to the next question here, do you have any recommendations on how a data architect can most effectively contribute to strengthening the organization's data culture? We love that question.
Really, really great question. Absolutely. Once again, everything I've talked about here from a governance and data strategy perspective, it understands data architecture concepts as well. I was asking it questions about things that I would have thought only Clive Finkelstein would have known, or John Zachman in some parts. But it has apparently read Clive's books and John's books as well and gave specific answers that are there. So I haven't done a specific talk on that, but if you saw, again, what we did for this one, was say, what is it that if you're going to do data governance, well, what are key characteristics of successful governance? These are directly from the AI, and you can ask as a data architect perspective. The way I would focus in, first of all, to get some traction on this, is that architectures always have to have a purpose. Again, I can build a data architecture that will deliver levels of service. I can build a data architecture that will deliver high quality. I can build a data architecture that will do it fast. Again, these are all strategic pieces, and your architecture is incomplete unless it incorporates those elements of strategy into it in there. And so looking at this, it understands CRUD matrices, it understands models. One of the things you can actually ask it, I've done this a couple times, is say, look, I've got these two migration systems over here. These are old systems. We're going to sunset them. We need to move them to a new data architecture. Here are the two data models of the two. Give me a first cut at what a combined data model might look like. It understands these concepts really well. It's not going to give you perfect information. Remember this, right? Here's our slide that it puts up. So key characteristics, obviously didn't even get close to that, or successful wasn't even done, but still very, very useful things. That would be a really interesting one, Shannon. Actually, in modeling, we'll probably cover some of that coming up.
Oh yeah, I love that. Oh, somebody wanted to know what the groovy tune was that came on suddenly. It is I think that's
yes, the free art.
Yeah.
Want to make sure we hadn't played a copyright thing for you. That wouldn't be it. It's a clip art. If you get back to that first page there, these guys, it'll take it a minute to come up, but they have a really nice site and they do really good work. They just want credit for it, and I'm really happy to give it to them.
Oh, I love that. All right. Well, so we got so what's your advice then, Peter, if the company already has data governance and a data catalog on the wrong journey with ambiguity, without domain data stewards and enterprise data architecture, canonical data model?
I'm sorry, Jenny, your question was, where do we go? What do we do if we're on the wrong track?
Yeah, I mean, on the, there's a data governance and data catalog implemented, but it's going in the wrong direction. It has ambiguity. It doesn't have any domain data stewards and enterprise, and it doesn't have an enterprise data architecture or canonical data model.
Use your skills with the AI. You don't even have to identify yourself or your company, but you can simply say, I've got this situation, describe it in the detail that you'd like to. You can dictate to these systems, right? They will take input from the microphones in order to do that. And ask specifically and say, all right, how do we go about addressing these kinds of things here, given these sets of constraints? What are the kinds, we've got another one that Shannon and I do on this, where we were looking at some data quality things last fall. And again, here's data. It was customer data, and it was a specific type of customer data on here. And so we asked the AI and said, well, look, if we treat these data elements badly, how's that going to impact the business? And it came back and offered us 10 or 15 suggestions 5 of them were good enough. We were able to get back to management, and very quickly they went, yeah, I think we do need to keep doing that. Again, great question. These are the kinds of things we're going to be addressing in the future. In addition to everything else we're already doing, the world never gets any simpler, does it? It just gets more, keep adding more pieces to it.
I know, right? That's all the questions that we have for now. Peter, thank you for again kicking off the year with such a great topic. I love we've done a lot of data strategy webinars, but I'm so glad that you're incorporating AI into this. It's becoming so prevalent into everything that we do, of course, for especially around data. So thank you. And I put it's way up there in the chat, but you can see the February webinar in there, which will be architecting for the future designing AI ready data ecosystem. Ooh.
That may be the one I was thinking about, Shannon, that we're going to enhance for next time. So, okay, great. Yeah, again, thank you guys. It's really rewarding to be here with you and to have this kind of interaction. So anything that you have, reach out to Shannon and we'll get back to you on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, everybody. Like I said, I'll get an email out to all registrants by end of day Thursday with links to the slides and links to the recording from today. So thanks, y'all. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you all. Bye, Shannon.
Bye, Peter. Thank you.